What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
Today's is one of the most important days of my life, and I'll tell you why. Because a few years back, I got a chance to meet my guest today, Jane Atkinson, and actually engaged her as a coach. And she has been such a catalyst to kick me forward, to help me understand what's possible. And she planted a seed in me. She goes, "Mike, when are you going to write your book?" I said, and 3 weeks ago, this came out, and I'll do a better job of it. 3 weeks ago, this thing came out. And it's equipped to lead the extraordinary power of emotional intelligence. And the whole time I was putting this together, Jane was sitting on my shoulder going, "When are you going to write your book, Mike?" And she has been an amazing, what I call dream maker for the speaking industry. So Jane, I welcome you. I was looking forward to playing with you today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's great to reconnect with you. We're old buds from a long time ago.
Yeah, very much so. Jane, as I said, when we were talking earlier, the reason I want to spend a couple of minutes with you on the phone is that we've been in, one of the things I speak a lot about is this word reset. Is that if you look into the business community today, you see people who they talk about the great resignation. The reality is that it's not that people are resigning and staying home. There's a reset that's taking place where people are changing jobs. It's not that like they're pulling into the marketplace. And that's what the pandemic caused us to. And I can't think of any profession that affected more than what the speaker community is in that space. And that's your backyard. Your role is helping speakers grow their business to magnificent proportions. What did you deal with personally in 2020?
Well, when March rolled around here in my neck of the woods, and of course globally, I had actually slipped under the wire with my last live event down in Phoenix. And I was one of the fortunate people that didn't have to cancel their live event. The next weekend, I had actually gone from Phoenix over to Dallas to another event, canceled. So it felt like the gauntlet had just dropped down right as I got under the wire on that. And so news starts filtering in, canceled, canceled, canceled. All my engagements just went away. And I, like many people, freaked out. I said to my husband, I think we're going to need to sell the house. I am really, really nervous about what's to come. I'd heard these news reports and I was kind of watching a little bit too much news back then. And I got really, really scared for I think about a week or two. And then my good friend Chris West said, "Hey, people need us now. We should do something right now, right in this moment. Let's provide a service." And so we decided to do 4 weeks of what we then called brand camp. And it was so much fun. And so week 1, Chris is there and he's all gung-ho and he's on. I am absent. Week 2, I show up. And then week 3, I'm there. And week 4, I'm kind of back to normal. But I had been doing a lot of mindset work, Mike, and I don't know if it would have taken a lot longer for me to come around. But what I recognized in about 10 days in was that people need me now more than ever. And I have had a Post-it note on my desktop here. People need me now more than ever. And it's kind of seen me through. Not only have I thrived during COVID, but I actually raised my rates. I've, continued to build out our school. And I kind of went for a while there almost just forgetting about it. And it became like just this secondary thing that was kind of going on in the background. And I would hear every week reports of, okay, we're starting to come back, what's happening, and I'll check in with people. It's mostly virtual in some places, depending on where you are. Up here in Canada, we're still mostly virtual, but we're starting to see 2022 being teed up for in-person events. I would say, Mike, I recognized very early in COVID the power of mindset.
Yeah,
And
that's
changing
that.
one thought to another was huge for me.
Yeah, I mean, and I love this. I love the fact that you did something exceptionally complex. That you went out and hired a big billboard, neon sign, and no, I take it back. That's not what you did. You got a sticky note. Okay, you got a sticky note because it's the little steps that we take that
Mhm.
really produce magnificent results, right? And so, are there any other little steps that you had to kind of go back and either make sure you did more of, or maybe even new?
Yeah, so thinking about the morning routine,
Hmm.
circled back, when I became the most untethered was when I stopped doing all of the self-care work. And I wasn't doing any yoga or walking on the treadmill or walking around the block or getting even outside. I mean, I was just glued to the television. It kind of reminded me a little bit of 9/11, Mike, because I just sat in front of the TV and cried for 5 days, and then I went for a walk. I lived down in Dallas at the time. Then went for a walk around White Rock Lake, and all of a sudden my perspective had shifted, and I kind of remembered that. So once I remembered self care and came back to my morning routine and started getting intentional with my life again, everything changed. And so I was training with the life coach school, Brooke Castillo. I got certified by, actually, I think I probably paid my $18,000 to get certified in March of 2020. And, just saying, okay, I'm in, I'm going to do this. I'm not being fearful about it. But the training that I got about how you can manage your mind better has paid off in spades with me and with my clients. And she had laid down the gauntlet and said, okay, let's do the impossible, kind of like an impossible challenge. I want you to set an impossible goal. So March 2020, about 3 weeks in, I said, okay, well, what feels impossible in this moment is that I could earn $50,000 between now and the end of May. That felt like an impossible goal based on what was going on. There were no meetings going on, no speakers, and everybody was kind of scrambling. And so I set that goal. But when I set it, I don't know that I had the mindset of people need me now more than ever. Once I truly stepped into that actual mindset and embodied it, not only did I make my goal, I made it a whole month earlier. I did it in like 5 weeks. And it was just like almost like flipping a light switch.
Hmm.
It was so incredible to go from this very, very dark space. We're in trouble. My industry's been wiped out, was what I was telling myself, to, and we need to sell the house, over to people need me now more than ever. We're not selling the house. We're fine. And onward. And that's what we did.
Yeah, help me understand something, especially this concept of setting the impossible goals. Working with a client last week, and I love talking to her because she's what I call a pragmatist. She's very realistic. And that's kind of a controller kind of person, and I mean
Mhm.
literally, she's financially a controller.
Yeah.
And when she put numbers together, she says, "No, my numbers are real.
Yeah.
They're not the real numbers, not the real numbers."
Yeah.
And we're talking about raising the bar of expectation for this year, next year. it,
Hmm.
it causes a little bit of shudder in her mind. What's the power that you've experienced and you coach on setting the impossible goal as something that's not just some vague something up in the atmosphere, but literally is a strategy?
What's gonna make you stretch? It's almost like your brain can't think of reasons why not, because it just feels so out there. you don't even give your brain a chance to say this will never happen. You're calling it an impossible goal, and you're saying, okay, and I'm going to go for it. It's impossible, and I'm going to go for it. And I think it starts. Dan Sullivan has this process called the 4 C's. I have them up beside me here, and commitment is the first C. And a lot of people think that confidence has to be the first C, but actually that comes last. It's commitment. And then when the times get hard, you tap into courage. And then you start to learn capability. That's the 3rd C, is capability. You have to learn new things in order to make it happen. And then from all of those things comes confidence. And I just think it's quite fascinating to think about where we have to start in the process. And it is indeed with commitment. I am committed to something that I'm calling impossible. But what do I have to lose if it doesn't happen? What if I only would have made 25K? Oh, well, darn,
You moved the ball.
I figure there's nothing to lose by setting an impossible goal. Now, you cannot stand in front of a group of accountants and tell them that. They were going to say, that's silly. I believe in setting realistic numbers for yourself, but every once in a while, and she had suggested, let's do something just short term. It's not a year-long goal. We usually do impossible goals for the year. It's actually just a really short, tight timeline because we were like, COVID was raining down on us.
Yeah, well, and the power that comes into this is like in working with a group of controllers, is that if you just leave it out there as an impossible goal and you don't do anything with it, it's not a goal. Okay, it's not even a wish. It's just a dream. The challenge is what you're saying is you set the goal, and then now what steps can I take? What steps am I committed? Not result. What steps am I willing to take to move in that direction?
And your brain subconsciously starts to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
You put this number in front of you, and then we really don't try to figure out the how when we're setting an impossible goal. We just go for it. And because the how will come later. When we get from commitment to courage, courage is when the going gets tough. You have to plow through it. But capability is actually, okay, well, what are the steps? Do I need to learn anything new in order to move there? And I think that the 4 C's, Dan Sullivan's 4 C's, really kind of work for almost everything. And it all starts with just being committed.
Very much so. It just reminds me of a client of mine, Fred Caldwell, chairman of the Caldwell Companies, big master plan community developer. Was sharing with me one day. He said, Mike, the key thing is start the journey. The process will reveal itself.
Exactly.
Very much in a driver. And that's exactly what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Here,
sometimes it's not even like, what is the how? Sometimes it could even be who, not how, to use another one of Dan's, his latest book, Who, Not How. Who can help me get there? And in my situation, Chris West had come along brilliantly just to help me bounce back from, a spiral of fear, and it was just so devastating in the early days.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying. Also,
dragged me along. He was my who in the early days.
Yeah, I love what you're saying right now. Is I think it is so important with what we're talking about. Is that the question you have to ask yourself is, who do I have around me that is speaking into me, that their voice resonates? I spent this weekend speaking at a retreat, and one of my friends was there, and he was asking me a question on the side, and he said that I love talking to you because I have just after speaking with you, your voice just has this way of making me think differently. Yeah. And I said, your voice is that way to me too.
Yeah.
And so it's like, who do you have? Who do you have such an important role? And we're going to be starting 2022 soon, and I really feel like I'd love to get your perspective, because you're now talking to your clients are just high-powered professional speakers, or people who want to go in that direction, are willing to do the work to get there, to help them really raise their capability Wealthy Speaker 2.0 is a must read for any speaker who wants to build a speaking business. And then I don't know if it's your latest book or if you have another one out, but you have the next one about scaling your business, which
That's the latest.
That's the latest one, which is the second one you got to read, or you can skip the first and go straight to the second one. I don't know, but
Well, you need the foundations actually, Mike.
yeah.
If you, especially if you're new to the industry, if you've been around the block a time or two and you really do have a good foundation, you can go straight to book number 2. But it's very, very helpful to have the foundations.
Yeah. So you see people at different stages in their career. But you're seeing people right now who are trying to chart a course from where we are right now, which is not where we were last year. It was really interesting. I hosted a webinar with the executive vice president of Stewart Title. He's in charge of statistical analysis, and I love this guy. Ted loves numbers. I mean, he just cracks numbers all the time. And he's got a PhD from A&M, and he was in charge of their statistical program. And he was showing me a slide of 2019, 2020, 2021, where we are year to date. And the power of that slide was, if you look at the bar graph for 2019, and you saw this 2020 sitting right here, and then you put 2021, he says, Mike, you take 2020, you wipe it out. We are ahead right now of where we were in 2019. And it's important for people to remember in 2019, we were churning. I mean, massive things were happening.
Yes.
So when you look at where we are right now, we're ahead of where we were prior to pre-pandemic. What are you seeing in the speaker community, kind of a benchmark of what's taking place?
I'd say that same thing is going to happen in speaking, but it may take a little bit longer. Another 6 months, into 2022, first and second quarter. There is business happening right now all over the place, but I think people are still a little bit cautious. So there's this like pent up demand for speakers that I don't think can be unleashed just yet, because there are state to state, everything is still like quasi uncertain all the way to COVID, right? So I think that we are going to see 2022, I think we're going to see our graph back full on.
Yeah. So what do we need to be doing right now? Okay. Of course, to generate revenue, to be building our business right now, but to really be in a position to gain momentum, which is what you need to do as you're coming out of a cycle. You got to build momentum in your business development, your marketing, your outreach.
Well, for some people, it's just keep on keeping on. They have been doing the work all throughout the last 2 years, and consistency is actually the key to the success, right? So if you do a podcast, do it consistently. If you do a blog, do it consistently. If you do social media, do it consistently. Allow your prospects and customers to be able to come to what to expect from you, that you are going to show up on a regular basis, and every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. For probably 10 years now, we've been putting out a tip from our database every Thursday. Once I started to get serious about the podcast, every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, we released a podcast, probably for the last 3 or 4 years. But we've been podcasting for a lot longer than that. But it was once I really committed to doing it and to doing it regularly, that was the game changer. And so I would say it's not like a whole bunch of new things we need to be doing. We need to do all the things that we do well consistently. And a lot of speakers, I would say, are great at like new ideas. They're quick starts like me. I'm going to embrace that and I'm going to go do it. And then by week 6 and week 7, it starts to trail off. And so just think about the things that you do really, really well, and then go all in on them and be committed to doing them on a regular basis. It could even be picking up the phone, sending out an email, connecting with people on LinkedIn, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Have you seen anything that your clients are doing to help them with consistency, other than just tightening their belt up and gutting their way through another day?
I would say team. My team is always, reminder, we need blah, blah, blah from you. That having somebody else be in charge of the consistency is the way to go. Because if it were left up to me and my own devices, I don't know what would happen. We would be off the
Mhm.
rails in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Somebody else to hold you accountable to your goal. And so when you hire someone to help you with your blog, you you and they will decide on what the process is going to be, and part of that process needs to be them emailing you 1 week out to say we will be needing your post in 7 days or whatever it might be.
Right. And for those people who haven't invested yet in any kind of a virtual assistant, when I mentioned the book that came out, one of the reasons it manifested itself is in March. I was in a meeting and I just felt this prompting to reach out to somebody. How'd you like to write a book with me on emotional intelligence? Because that's your space and my space. She goes, yeah, that's great. And so we started the process. We started small. We started by putting together a little flip book, a little marketing thing. And so, this is kind of cool. And so we ought to make this into an ebook. And we went, oh, that's kind of cool. And so let's make it into a skinny book. That's kind of cool. And then finally we said, oh my God, this has some meat. The problem is, how do we be consistent? So we just set up a time every Monday at 8:30 to say, we're going to work for that 1 hour together. Right. And then we'll do things to come back in. And so, but it was having Thesha Jenkins involved with me, to your point, of somebody that is there's both an accountability, somebody you can do some outreach with.
Yes.
It's increasing your sphere of connection, so that you really feel connected to somebody on the journey.
And it's so important. And when you have the right team in your backyard, I have an editor who I have been with now, Mike, for 6 books over 20 years. And she's not only just my editor, but she's also the project manager for me. She's the one that goes and gets the ISBN number. I don't do that. And so she manages the whole project. And then Kim, who's my interior designer, also has been part of the team for 20 years and 6 books. It's incredible to have people that you trust to that degree.
Very much so. And somebody you can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, do you have a reference for me, somebody I can reach out to, like Catherine Leake?
That's who I'm talking about.
Because she was the one who was the editor of my book. Because I reached out to Jane and I said, who should I use? She goes, one person, and put me in contact with her. And
Catherine Leake, Green Onion Publishing. She knows what she's doing. And I have loved working with her for many, many, many years.
Has a gift for making somebody's voice come alive, and just a huge resource. And so, Jane, I warned you at the beginning. You and I could have spent all day talking. Neither one of us have time for that, even though I'd love to. But to kind of wrap this thing up, when you think back over the course of the last, what's it been, 16, 17, 18 months, something like that, and you think about what you know today, that you wish you knew at the start of this venture. And when you think back, what do you know today because of what you've experienced in climbing walls, knocking down doors? What would it be?
It's that what I think about the things that happen to me is in my control. Is what I think about things that are happening in the world is optional to me. I can go around and find other people who will back me up in saying, this is horrible, this is horrible, this is horrible. But when I get a hand on my own thoughts about things, and when I surround myself with people who are kind of going where I want to go, which is to a more positive place, I get there much, much faster.
I love that. It's a great way to put a cap on this type of thing. It's about mindset. I will tell you, for those who are blessed to have listened to this, that are either on YouTube or on our podcast, what I love about Jane, and I've experienced this myself, is that Jane, you're a dream maker. That's your profession. You help people accomplish the dreams in their life. And when I think about and when I say that, is because you have this gift of helping people to see them greater than they see themselves even. and that's a testament to your heart and your mind. And so I'm blessed to have walked with you.
Thank you, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you today.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.